Greetings and welcome to a Wednesday night edition of the Big D podcast. Before I bring in the nice special guest, please subscribe, like, share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page. We hopefully have not just more content coming, but hopefully have some new designs and new ideas to enhance the podcast. So I'm hopeful of sharing that. So joining us from Columbus, Ohio tonight is my friend Jeff Bell. Jeff is part of the Fantasy Pro Football Guys and also hosts two podcasts, the Devi Royale and Coming Off the Edge. Jeff, did I get everything?
You did. That was fantastic, Dylan. Thank you so much for having me. You nailed it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, so one thing both of us can agree on is your passion for the Buffalo Bills. So could you talk about how long you've been a Bills fan and what made you become a part of Bills Mafia?
Sure. So it was really my dad was not an NFL fan, and I didn't really have a team or direction to go, and so I grew up in Northwest Ohio, and in kindergarten, the Bills were really good because it was when they had Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas, and kids were like, "Oh, what's your team?" And I was like, "Well, I don't really know." And then I saw the Bills logo. I saw, well, that's red, white, and blue. And when I was a little kid, I was like, red, white, and blue, like the American flag. Let's go for the Bills. They're a good team, and that was 32 years ago or so. And so I've been committed over 3 decades now, and certainly I've experienced my fair share of all downs, really, but we're headed in the other direction, so that's exciting.
Yeah, so thinking back to those Bills teams in the late 80s, early 90s, I can remember Walt Levy putting together a collection of incredible talent. I mean, Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas,
Yes.
Andre Reed, James Lofton, and of course Bruce Smith on defense. I mean, when did you figure out that the Bills would be really good?
Uh, well, they were in the Super Bowl when I was a kindergartner, so I was like, that's probably a good indication that if I like the team that's in the Super Bowl, and I was a kid, I didn't know any better, but it's now would be considered front running. But I think when you're in kindergarten and you just kind of fall into it, I don't know if you can really be called a front runner after you've experienced nearly 20 years of Bills depression and disappointment.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, were you even old enough to like see the Super Bowl? Like, did you even know what enough about football to know what was happening in those Super Bowls?
Yeah, so when I was in kindergarten, it was when they played the Giants, and then when first grade was when they played the Redskins. And so by the time I was in football at a young age, and so I was a big sports fan. But by the time that I got into second, third grade, when they played the Cowboys in the Super Bowl, I knew those games very well. I remember those games, and then once I get into losing to you guys in the Jim Kelly era, that was closer to almost high school by that point. But certainly there was some losses to the Steelers in the playoffs after that. But yeah, I definitely do remember that playoff run. And so the one memory I do remember, the Oilers game when they were down, like it was like 38-3 or something, like it was 35-3, what I think was what it was. And so I just was all hyped up for that game and just so disappointed. And as a kid, I just went out and I think I just played in the backyard and I couldn't even watch it. And so I missed the whole comeback, but that was the most historic comeback I believe ever still.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to that wild card game, I'm like, what in the what happened? Because oddly enough, I think the Oilers and Bills met in Week 17. That was the game Jim Kelly was hurt, and so Frank Wright started. I remember early in the second half, he threw a pick six. I mean,
It was over.
I mean, for one of the few times it looked like Bills fans wanted to leave, and I've seen Orchard Park crowded when it's like 15 and snowing, and I
Yeah.
think Bills fans want to leave like, we're done, see you, I'm going
That's
home.
absolutely, yeah, you're exactly right. I do remember that. And that 30 for 30 was pretty great that came out. It was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. They did a really good 30 for 30 on that era of the Bills too. And that helped things that I had remembered, but then watching that again, and reinforced those memories.
Yeah, so oddly enough, the Bills lost 4 straight Super Bowls, all the NFC East teams. the Giants, the Redskins at the time, and then twice to the Cowboys. Like, why couldn't you get somebody from like the NFC, Central, the NFC West? Like, why did you always get the NFC East? I know the NFC East was great and it was there those times because the Giants, Phil Simms, LT, the Redskins were Joe Gibbs, Mark Rippon, Cowboys, we know what happened. And even the Eagles were really good with Reggie White and company. Like, why did you always get the NFC East in the Super Bowl?
I don't know, but it definitely fostered a lifetime of I do not care for the NFC East, and it drives me crazy that they're always in prime time. And for my entire life, I've almost been an Eagles fan by default because they weren't the team that beat us in the Super Bowl in that division.
Just be glad you didn't play the. I mean, you imagine if you played the Eagles in that 5th straight Super Bowl. I mean, and then you lost that game. Like, good riddance NFC East. Like, we'd rather play in the AFC South than what have.
It would have been rough. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So obviously, after those 4 straight Super Bowls, Bills that went down a little bit. I mean, you still made the playoffs a few times in the mid-90s, and then in the late 90s, we all know what happened with the New City Miracle. I'm sure you are still calling that a forward pass instead of a.
It was absolutely a forward pass. The Music City forward pass. That was when I was a freshman year in high school. I do remember that vividly. And that was a forward pass all the way. You'll never convince me that it was otherwise. And that team was rolling that year. That team played very well towards the end, through the end of the season. Then they played Rob Johnson out of nowhere because they were rolling with Flutie, and I'll never understand that decision. But he played well enough to win the game, and they did win the game. They just gotta. I don't know how you let that happen though. As the special teams, it seems like somebody didn't do their job there, but that's still a rough loss.
I'm just saying somebody fell asleep because with a few seconds left, Jeff Fisher's was a gambler, and something crazy's coming.
Absolutely.
That play.
Well, that was the year too. Didn't the Jags blow out the Dolphins in the playoffs that year and then lose to the Titans?
Yeah, that was Dan Marino's. That was Dan Marino's last game. We ended Dan Marino's career. Yeah, we ended 2 Hall of Famers.
You did. Yeah, you ended Jim Kelly's career and you ended Dan Marino's career.
Oops.
Sorry. What are you gonna do about it?
And then the daggum Titans beat us in the AFC Championship game. Like, we went 15-3, and all 3 losses were to the same bleeping team.
Oh, I know. That's rough, man. It's I like you said, 4 straight to the NFC East. I get it. When you're losing into the same group over the same team over and over again.
That gum you, Steve McNair and Eddie George.
Yes. Yeah.
Rest in peace, Steve McNair.
Well, yes, that's very true too.
Yeah, and then the Bills went on a major tailspin in the 2000s. The Drew Bledsoe deal did not work out.
No, and the one that really burns me in that era still. I was in college. I went to Ohio University, and our rival was Miami University. And so I followed Ben Roethlisberger very closely in college. Like, I remember watching him frequently, going to a MAC school, going to a rival school, and some of my best friends went there. And when the Bills, the legend goes that they had the deal done. I believe it was even with the Jaguars. They had a deal done that they were going to trade up and get Ben Roethlisberger. And I think that the Jaguars, it was either the Jaguars or the Texans, but it was when you drafted Reggie Williams, the wide receiver out of Washington. It was that year, and I think you did that, and the Texans saw it, and they said, well, we needed to add another cornerback, so we can't do this deal with you for Buffalo. And I believe that was Donta Robinson that they drafted maybe.
Yep.
So then that deal blew up, and then he became a Steeler. They knew they had to get in front of the Steelers. And then, to compound matters, they traded their first year the next year to get J.P. Lossman. And that first the next year, you know what quarterback that could have been?
Aaron Rodgers?
Aaron Rodgers, that's correct. He went like 4 or 5 picks after that pick would have happened. And they traded, basically they whiffed on getting Ben Roethlisberger, who I desperately wanted. And then they whiffed on the next year getting Aaron Rodgers, and they got JP Losman. And if that does not sum up that era of being a Bills fan, nothing else does.
Hey, at least you didn't get Kyle Bowler, but that's just at least you didn't get Kyle Bowler. And I'm trying to think. Did JP Losman even do anything in Buffalo?
No.
I don't remember
No.
Losman.
No, that's because you don't remember him for a reason. No, he didn't do anything. And then the next guy up was shortly after was Trent Edwards, and Trent Edwards was a guy that
from Stanford.
Well, he had a very solid the first 5 games of his career. He looked like he might really be something for a rookie playing his first 5 games. He didn't turn the ball over. They won all the games. He kept the ball moving. They had several fourth quarter comebacks, and then Adrian Wilson in the Cardinals game came on a safety blitz, and he just wrecked him. It was like one of the biggest, if you don't remember that hit, it was one of the biggest hits that you will see in the NFL. Like the guys don't do that type of thing anymore. And he was just never the same after that hit.
Yeah, talk about a bygone era of guys kicking the crap out of each other.
Very true, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like Rodney Harrison would like come in and like just tackle you some way, like all those guys. Trying to think who was the safety for the Broncos back in the day. Steve Atwater. Atwater would have been ejected every other play.
Very true. He definitely would have been.
And then the Bills drafted E.J. Manuel from Florida State in one of the worst quarterback drafts I've ever seen.
Yes. That was a terrible pick too. That
was a bad draft in general.
That was, yeah. They forced the issue there. They decided they wanted EJ, and I think everybody going in knew that this guy was not a first-round quarterback, and they just took him in the first round anyways because they didn't want to miss on him.
And then, that Manuel didn't work well. And then a few years later, Tyrod Taylor, who's basically bounced around half the league, came there, and he actually led you to the playoffs. But do you remember the one game that Nathan Peterman played against the Chargers, and he threw like 5 picks in the first half? I'm like, why did they put in Nathan Peterman for Tyrod Taylor?
I have no idea what was going on with that. I believe that was even Sean McDermott. I don't know. That wasn't Sean McDermott yet.
No, but I don't know if that was Sean. Wait a minute.
I don't know if that was. I thought it might have been. Gosh.
It may have been because I think it was either 20.
Because they still made the playoffs, I think. They played Peterman for a game, but then they put Tyrod back in. They made the playoffs, and they played Jacksonville that year. And because McDermott made the playoffs right away. Year 2.
Yeah, 2017 because I think it was. Yeah, that was the year. That was the year Peterman started week 11 against the Chargers. He threw 5 picks in the first half. And then Peterman and then I remember the wild card game because Peterman replaced Taylor because he was in concussion protocol. And then Jalen Ramsey intercepted Peterman late in the game.
Yes. Yeah, I do. That was one of for the NFL's offensive era, that was not an offensive game at all.
I can attest to that game in a few. We'll talk about it in a few minutes, but that looked like a game from the 1950s. I mean, it was ugly. I mean,
yes,
we'll talk about it. I mean, it was ugly. And then the next year, the Bills finally drafted their replacement for Jim Kelly 22 years late in Josh Allen. So after some struggles, at least he remembered his helmet. Yeah, not all Bills players have remembered their helmets.
That's true.
And then Josh Allen finally developed and looked like a star last year. I mean, He he looked like a Buffalo quarterback throwing that ball no matter what the conditions, no matter who was out, who was coaching on the other side. I mean, Josh Allen looked like a stud last year.
Yeah, he absolutely did. I'm very excited about him this year. I think he's legit. I mean, I don't know what else we more to see. I think almost he should have been the NFL MVP last year, and he might be a great chance to do it this year.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of what Josh Allen did last year is so underrated because I mean, everybody remembers the Stephon Diggs trade, and I think that could end up being one of the biggest trade. That could end up being like the wide receiver equivalent of Eli Manning for Philip Rivers because both teams got a stud receiver. Usually, you don't see a trade that helps two teams, but I think the Diggs for Jefferson trade ends up helping both teams because Jefferson was a star in Minnesota, and Stephon Diggs led the league in receiving yards last year. And guess what Josh Allen needed? A number one receiver. Guess who Stephon Diggs is? A number one receiver.
You're exactly right. And that definitely made the offense. That was the missing piece, and that trade looks fantastic now. Certainly, I mean, maybe Justin Jefferson would have been that same level player after we saw how good he was coming away right away for the Vikings. And that's kind of an interesting what if. And I think probably all teams are tied to these what ifs, but the Bills specifically, we traded away Justin Jefferson there. We traded away Patrick Mahomes. And so there's some of these deals that, for as good as they are right now, things could be looking a little bit better.
You did okay. You did okay getting Tre'Davious White, though. It's not like
Tre'Davious White, and you end up with Josh Allen. I mean, that's great, but I wonder if that's a good question. If you would trade Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen and Tre'Davious White as an organization of having the next 15 years or whatever it is of Mahomes, or if you're fine with taking Allen and getting the stud defensive back for 7 of those years.
I'm just saying. I'm eating at Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen's place for the next few years.
Yes, yeah, no, I'm very excited about Josh Allen, and certainly, but it is one of those things as a Bills fan that you're just conditioned to the bad luck, and so to really start to feel good about that trade, I think you're going to have to see Josh Allen beat Mahomes in the playoffs and go a little bit further one of these years.
Unfortunately, speaking of playoffs, you and I both know what happened in the AFC Championship game. Patrick Mahomes, despite the toe injury or whatever it was, outgunned Josh Allen. I mean, true. Josh Allen struggled. I mean, a lot of people struggle in Arrowhead, but be honest, I think if you ask Bills fans, you got to the AFC Championship game last year. I mean, true, you would have loved another rematch in Tampa 30 years after your first Super Bowl appearance there. I'm sure it would have been brought back a lot of memories, but it's not like you went 5-11. You enjoyed a phenomenal season.
We did, yeah, and it's one of those that when you've been bad for a long time, on the way up, you can stomach these playoff losses because it just feels good to be that good and to make those type of runs. And then, but after a couple of years, 2 or 3 years at most, you're going to want to win one of these ones.
Yeah, let's just say if you lose to Kansas City this year, it's getting annoying.
It's a different feeling, absolutely. So if we have almost a duplicate season of last year, you still feel good about it that you were there, but yeah, not being able to get over that hump with Kansas City, that starts to become a complex in you. It's great because it changes the expectations of a fan base, and it's good to feel that way. It's good to feel like we're going to be in the playoffs, and maybe we're just going to be worried about playoff positioning, home field advantage, potentially the one bye week now, and be able to host the AFC Championship game, and versus maybe we can go maybe we can go 9-7 and the luck will work for us and we'll be able to get the playoff spot and we'll be a playoff team.
Well, looking at the schedule, and I'm sure when you looked at the schedule, that October 10th rematch at Arrowhead was the first game you circled, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that game. And really, that one, I'm very excited about that game. I kind of look through the schedule and just see like how many really big games, and that's the one thing. Depending on how much better Miami and the Patriots get this year, because I'm not sold on the Jets. Sorry, Jets fans, I'm not sold on you being any good this year. But depending on how good Miami and the Patriots get, if that's one of those things where that's 6 wins, you're looking at your record a lot differently than if that's one of those things where it's 4-2.
True, but if you look at it, Kansas City, you're going to get a good. I mean, 3 of your first 6 games are critical road encounters. I mean, Miami. I mean, Wolf will be back for that game. I mean, I'm not sure how much you've watched in preseason. I mean, it seems like Jalen Waddle looks really solid. I
He
mean,
does, yes.
I wonder who'd win a foot race stakes against Jalen Waddle. That'd be fun to see.
That would be too. I think I'd have to take Waddle in that one. I don't know. Waddle is phenomenal.
And then week 5 against the Chiefs, and then maybe an underrated one. How about next Monday, the following Monday night in Nashville against the Titans? Where
the Titans are a team that have our number. It seems like we just, even when the Bills are supposedly better than them, the game would be good. And going back to the Music City Miracle, last year the Bills had a lot of momentum, and then they played the Titans, and it was like right after the Titans were all in that mess with the Steelers, and like they were playing shorthanded, and they just went in and they dominated Buffalo. And so the Titans just seem to have the Bills number.
Yeah, in a way, I think that game will. I think the Kansas City and Tennessee games will show whether or not the Bills' improvements on offense and defense will be enough. Because I like what the Bills did on both sides of the ball. I think you need another wide receiver, Emmanuel Sanders, the grown-up possession wide receiver, exactly what Josh Allen needed. And then I like the Bills drafting a couple pass rush. I mean, Gregory Rosa. Is that how I'm saying it? Is that how I'm saying it?
Rousseau
brings a lot of potential. And then who was you drafted?
Carlos
Basham, another pass rusher from Wake Forest. So exactly what you need, because guess what? You can never have enough pass rushers.
You can never build the offensive line enough. They took those 2 guys, and then they took offensive linemen in the 3rd and 4th rounds. They feel good about the defensive backs for the most part. They wanted to get a corner earlier, but the value didn't really fall for them. I would have loved if they would have got a running back. I really wanted one of these ETN or Najee Harris in the 1st round. I feel like if you would have added that to the offense, you would be looking at even a more dynamic offense. But
I'm just saying the Bills and Dolphins look like they were running back short.
Yes. Yeah, the Bills, that is the one spot on the offense that if they had a game-breaking running back, or even tight end is another spot too. And I thought that they were going to get aggressive and go for a tight end, because Travis Kelce was the guy that killed them last year in the AFC Championship game. They just couldn't cover that guy. And so they mentioned that they –
it seemed like every other play, like it was either 15 or 10. Like Kelce would kill you over the middle, and I think Sheeta got like 1 or 2 big plays. Like I know who's going to win this game, because one team's got the best tight end in football, and the other team doesn't.
Yeah, no, and it was bad. It was just one of those that they just moved the ball at will, and you felt like you were going to have to score every single time to keep up with them. And I remember the Bills were kind of hanging in it. And then Devin Singletary had a big drop that would have been first down and kind of critical. And the Chiefs got the ball back, and I feel like they went right down and scored a touchdown again. And then it was just kind of game over after that one.
Yeah, then you kicked too many field goals. Like, why is Buffalo kicking so many field goals? I'm like, you're not going to win a game against the Steelers kicking field goals. Like, didn't you see the Packers lose because they kicked the field goal with 2 minutes left?
Oh, I know. It was, but here we are, and we're 2 or 3 weeks away from another season. So it's just excited to be to this point in the calendar, this time of year. You think back on the past, but at the same time, there's just so many things to be excited about. And especially as a Bills fan, we're ready to kick the season off.
Yeah. So as I've done with a lot of guests lately, we've I'm testing your memory. So, do you remember the 96 AFC wildcard game?
The 96 AFC wildcard game. Is that when they played Pittsburgh?
No, no. I'll give you a hint. It was not. It's not what. It's not the Jim Kelly Dan Marino playoff game from the year before.
Okay.
At
The
least I
90s.
think of it. It's like 94, 95 when Kelly and Marino met in the playoffs.
I gotcha. The 96 game was. Oh, I feel like I blacked this game out because I feel like the Dolphins beat the Bills, and I just
No.
didn't even.
No,
Oh,
right state, but go a little north.
Oh, the Jack. Well, that was the year Natron Means. Yeah,
Yeah,
that year. Yeah, I remember that game. Natron Means just kind of tore through, and the Bills were expected to win comfortably over the Jags, and that was the year that you guys had Brunell and you lost to Elway in the AFC Championship game. Yeah, I definitely remember that.
Actually, we didn't lose to Elway that AFC Championship game. We beat Elway as 14-point dogs the next week.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it was. Was that the Patriots that you lost to?
Yeah, Duke Bledsoe,
Yes.
Bill Parcells beat us.
Okay. Yes, I do remember that upset of the Broncos. Yes, I do remember that. And then the Broncos won the next year, I feel like.
Then Denver gave us a kick in the one the next year.
Yeah, the next year at 97, I think, was when they played Atlanta, and then I feel like then they played Green Bay.
Yeah, they played Green Bay when Terrell Davis scored 3 touchdowns in his hometown. Then they played Atlanta and Miami.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like I'm forgetting a Super Bowl in there though because the Patriots played the Packers. The Packers go back to back-to-back Super Bowls, or
Green Bay was in New Orleans and San Diego.
Gotcha.
How Brett Favre only won one Super Bowl in Green Bay.
Well, and that's the crazy thing because you look at both. We can both relate as Jaguars fans and Bills fans. Could you imagine having Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers as your quarterbacks for the last 30 years, but then you have 2 Super Bowls to win out of it?
I mean, let's just talk about
I would take 2 Super Bowls, certainly.
Super Bowl ring. I mean,
yes, you're right.
Nick Foles, Trent Dilfer.
Yeah. No, one Ashley, yeah. It says the Jaguars fans and Bills fans.
Brad
certainly,
Johnson.
we would take 1 Super Bowl ring, but it does kind of feel funny.
I wouldn't even take a Super Bowl ring. I'd take a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that too. I get it. Now it's nice and that was it was nice to just be in the AFC Championship game. But certainly, if they would have won, and I don't know if my heart would have been able to handle a Super Bowl because it was just an unexpected year where everything just went right. And it was one of those that, now this year you've got different expectations on the team. Last year you kind of were like, okay, maybe they can beat the Patriots and be a 10-6 type playoff team and maybe be competitive. But to get to the level that they got to and the way they got there, then you're like, okay, we can be the best team in the league.
Yeah, I think the Bills Mafia will have a lot of expectations this year. I think Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs will be huge, not just for your Bills, but for fantasy players this year. I mean, I'm considering drafting them in my leagues.
Yeah, I would definitely get them for sure. I think those 2 guys are the key pieces, and you might want to grab one of the other receivers, either Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, or Gabriel Davis, or potentially even Devin Singletary supposedly looks good. I don't know if I can really buy myself on Devin Singletary, but some people like Zach Moss. I think they like to use Josh Allen just as a quarterback and the running back too much.
Just give Josh Allen the ball like it.
Well, that's what they do. They just say we've got Josh Allen and we got Stephon Diggs. We'll run it and throw it with Josh, and Diggs will catch it. And why mess around too much more?
Yeah, maybe have Diggs thrown and Josh Allen catch it this year. I'm just saying.
We never know. It could happen. Josh is athletic enough to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if Stephon Diggs was able to throw too.
I mean, if Nick Foles caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl and Tom Brady dropped the pass in the Super Bowl, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So thanks for hopping on, and we'll see you. And we wish you Bills well this year.
Thank you very much for having me, Dylan. I appreciate it, and enjoyed talking with you.